and I didn't want to break it.
And we are live. And my camera decided to go fuzzy. Okay.
Betrayal.
So I am Jennifer Bean. I am the moderator for today's panel, which is The Voice of an Angel. And as much as we all would love to hear Geneva talk for an hour, this is for the narrators. So we're just going to go through and introduce ourselves. They're going to introduce themselves. I will be moderating. We're going to start with Gary.
Hello. My name is Gary. I'm probably a baby lit RPG narrator compared to the rest of this panel, but some of the stuff I've done is Trickster's Tale 1 and 2 for Soundbooth Theatre, and currently working on a certain book about large chests for the same company. Mostly do romance stuff, but as you can hear, I have a weird accent. I'm from Ireland. I've been narrating for about, 7 years, I think, maybe. And it's a lot of fun. Nice to meet you all.
I'm just gonna go to Daniel now.
Can't hear Daniel.
Oh, you're muted.
StreamYard is playing
what is
jokes
happening
on us.
Now you're muted on Streamlab. Unmute yourself on Streamlab. Or Streamlab.
Yay!
Can we
There
hear?
you go. Yes.
Yay.
Perfect
go,
thing for a
Daniel.
voiceover panel. Mic issues. Gotta love it.
Who invited this guy?
Every damn day.
Don't know. But hi all. I'm Daniel Wisniewski. I've been a narrator for about 3 years now. And I love lit RPG. I love fantasy, and I work a lot in fantasy sci-fi. Some of the stuff I've done has been Dr. Druid. I did the Battleborn series, Tokens and Towers. And right now I'm working on the second book by Sean Oswald in the Class Shift series. So yeah, I'm just very happy to be here. Just a big old fantasy nerd, and yeah.
Andrea.
Hello. I'm Andrea Parsnow. I've been a narrator for 5-ish years now. I think I'm coming up on 6. I've lost count. It's a blur, a good blur. I
good
narrate
sign.
primarily in like lit RPG, harem, fantasy in general. Big old nerd. So if it's got elves or aliens or something like that in it, I'm probably cool with narrating it. I'm a nerd just like the rest of us.
And last but not least, Steve.
I'm Steve Campbell. I've been narrating for around the same time as Andrea, 5+ years or so. And I've loved lit RPG ever since I found out about it. I try and do as much as I can in it, though I do a lot of stuff in other areas where I do some nonfiction and some romance and that kind of stuff, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. But most of the time I'm sitting very comfortably in lit RPG. Stuff I've recently worked on, I'm really excited about, is any day now, Second Chance Swordsman by Jacob Tanner is going to be coming out. And currently I'm working on the second book in the Systems Misinterpret series by Ryan De Bruin. This one's called In Dark Inspire. The ebook releases at the end of the month. Couldn't quite get everything lined up to get this one to be a coinciding release, but it will be coming out very, very shortly after that. So very excited about that one as well.
I'm with Steve on that one.
You are doing that one with me. Yeah, that's one that we're working on together.
I'm going to do a quick housekeeping. So we are using StreamYard.
Kyle read my mind.
And if you would like to grant Facebook your permissions, then we will be able to see your name and it will pop up on as Geneva's comment is posted. You just need to click that link, grant your permissions, and it will redirect you back to Facebook. And then you can just comment and we will see who is making the comment. So, I mean, we know who to shit talk, basically, right? Yeah.
Instead of just Facebook user.
Works, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, because questions are a thing, if anyone has any questions for the narrators, you've heard what they are currently working on, what some of the works that they have done. And I think I'm going to go with a question just that everyone will have at some point is what was, I'm going to change this question now in my head. I know. Because this is Voice of an Angel, What was your most angelic character that you have voiced?
Oh man.
Oh my word.
So whoever wants to go first, I'll give you time to think on that.
So
Daniel?
only because I did it yesterday. It is a literal angel. Angel. In Class Shift, the Sean Oswald series, the main character is constantly shifting between different typical dungeon diving classes. So he goes from a warrior to a blood mage to a rogue. He's a dervish now, which is like a dancing swordsman, and he's in a dungeon where he is having to fight a greater fiend in the image and guise of an angel. So, and I already had two characters in his party with very kind of, British kind of affectation. So I couldn't make the angel like, typically like haughty and mighty. So trying to do that without an accent, and then turns out to be, a demonic, monstrous creature. So that's the most literal angelic voice I've had to do lately.
I've done angels a couple of times. I did a series that dealt with angels under Chris Graves, and then there was one other one I did that I really loved. I worked on a series for Macronomicon with Podium, which I'm really excited to say that I'm doing another series with Macronomicon with Podium later this year, and another one with Macronomicon with Sound Booth Theater early next year. So I'm a big fan of his stuff, so I'm really excited about that. Anyways, he did this Stitched World series, and there was a guardian angel for one of the characters who was from the South, and so the guardian angel had a Southern accent, but was really flamboyant, and I was so happy because the pop culture references in that series are just chef's kiss. And there was one section where he was about to assassinate someone, and he started doing the prayer from Boondock Saints. And yes. I really wanted, I was like, how do I do this? Because he's got this big Southern drawl as he's going on. And I'm like, do I do that? Or do I switch it right over to Irish and just start doing the, for thee, my Lord, for thee, and shepherds we shall be. And I was just like, oh, how do I? And it was a lot of fun. I had so much fun with that series. And that was one of my favorite angels that I've gotten to do, because he is just ridiculous.
Gary or Andrea?
I have a literal angel from that was Death's Mantle by Harmon Cooper. It was all about a guy who had died and was the new death, basically, and he was sick and hated his lot in life, and so he was really bitter about dying. But he was basically becoming the new death, and the war with heaven, and he was kind of like, he was falling in love with this angel that hated him, and the war of good and evil that's not really good and evil. It kind of touches on the whole neutrality of death and how it's demonized, but in reality it is true neutral. I thought it was a really cool story. It actually won an Earphones Award. That was a good one. Death's Mantle was super fun. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Danira the angel. But yeah, she was a tough lady. Like, she was super tough. So I don't think I voiced her particularly like angelically necessarily. She was more just badass.
Yeah, I've done some angels. None that kind of stick out, but one kind of like angelic, kind of like light, airy, breathy voice maybe that one might associate with what we think of as angels is in the latest Trickster's Tale book. And it's just this guy called Phineas who makes wigs for a living. And he's just a posh little gnome. And so that kind of like, just that like airy kind of like, oh, I'm an angel, ooh, is probably the closest to being an angelic voice I've done. I think anyway.
So I was just about to pull this question. When did you guys get into narrating? I'm going to start with Andrea.
2017, I started narration. It was a friend of mine who basically said, you should really look into this. I was in college for vocal. I was a classical voice major. And basically he said, hey, you know how to use your voice. You really should consider this. I think it'd be cool for you. So I looked into it, found ACX, and it's been a long, fun road like from that point. I knew going into it, I wanted to narrate in Lit RPG because I was a fan of Lit RPG and like in the groups and stuff before I ever started narrating. And I was a massive fan of Jeff Hayes. So I was like, I want to do that kind of narration. Like I want to do that with like cool voices and like characters and all kinds of stuff. And so I even reached out to Jeff and did one of those like really annoying emails where it was like, do you think that like I have a future in this? Could you like listen to my thing and like give me feedback on it? And the dude actually did. I will forever be grateful. Jeff actually responded and gave me like a critique, and
Nice.
it was great advice. It was solid, and I moved forward from there. And I just kind of kept hammering it, wanting to be in Lit RPG. So I started hunting down female-led books and stuff like Travail Online and stuff like that. So Potera, that kind of thing. I'm like everybody else. I have a couple of like weird tiny romance novels that are the beginning of my career. They're both a little strange. I love them both. They're still adorable, but they're not where I stayed, basically.
Right, Steve?
I got started right around the same time. I started looking into it in 2015, 2016, and then got really serious about it towards the end of 2016 and bought my first microphone December 21st. It's marked in my brain, and started coaching in January. And my first book came out in July, August of 2017. I took a lot of time because I'm Canadian and Americans are racist. So it took me a while. It took me a while to break in. Well, I mean, I'm just
drop
saying.
that right there. Okay.
Well, I mean, I was like all excited because I'm like, ACX is this awesome thing. And Andrea talks about how she got started. That's where most of the narrators that started, in the last probably, I'd say 7-10 years got their start. And so when I went to sign up, they're like, oh, we can't, you're Canadian. And I was like, are you serious right now? And so I actually wrote ACX a letter, and those that have heard it, there's been a few, have been like, how did you have the balls to write that letter? Because I called them sexist, I called them racist, I called them everything that you can imagine in a very Canadian way. And
With all due respect,
I'm not going to say that letter changed their minds, but a couple of months later, ACX was then available to Canadians. So draw your own conclusions, I guess.
Maybe Canadian narrators have you to thank.
I
That's
don't.
what it sounds like.
I'm not going to say it. I mean, I'm okay with you saying that, but I'm not going to say it.
As much as
You're the voice
I'm
of
down with
Canada,
it.
is what you're telling me.
That's gospel.
Yeah,
Now. That's
yeah.
that's in the narrator Bible. Steve is what made ACX in Canada.
World
That's it. I'm writing it
canon.
down.
You've heard it here first, folks.
Yep.
I go to Gary.
I had a very similar experience to both Steve and Andrea. In about 2014, I was teaching English in Japan, and I was like, I hate this. But like, I really
Was it hard for you to teach English, having to learn it first before you start?
Steve, it was a trial, but I got there. But I liked running and listening to audiobooks, and I did the same thing. I emailed Michael Kramer and Kate Redding because I loved their audiobooks, and they were good enough to get back to me and said, hey, here's a coach we like, go talk to him. And it was Sean Pratt, who I started coaching with in about 2014, and then just kind of stuck with it, trying to get better as much as I could, and it's still here today. So it's worked out.
I thought it was super unique in my story of messaging Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, telling them that they were my inspiration to become narrators, and blah 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 blah, and them saying, yeah, you should work with Sean Pratt, he's great. And then I heard what is her name, Suzanne Freeman.
Oh yes,
was interviewed. Yeah, and she said virtually the same thing. And then you and I were chatting at an APAC, and you were like telling the story, and you had mentioned that, and I was like, son of a bitch, I'm just like white bread of commonality. That's what everyone does apparently.
But
I thought it was unique, and I'm not.
I couldn't get onto ACX either because I'm Irish.
Mm.
But I expressed
Racist
that in the
Canadian.
ACX Facebook group, and another Irish narrator was like, I got your back, here's what you do.
Nice.
And managed to get onto ACX legally, correctly, properly, the right way.
Yes.
No deceit at all. Would never do that. What?
Dan is next. If you're done, Gary.
You're
I didn't mean
done.
it to sound like that.
Enough of you.
My feed suddenly just cuts and is.
I don't have those
Got him.
permissions. Geneva,
Um,
blame her.
Well, I think I got into this the newest out of all this here. I said in 2019. I had been working in New York City. I'm trained as a stage actor originally, but I've always loved voiceover. I've always wanted to get into voiceover. And right around the time I was auditioning for this off-Broadway show, I saw on Backstage that there was an open audition for this company that works on audiobooks that just have a quick turnaround, and I've always wanted to get into voice acting. So I jumped on that, and then the pandemic hit and just wiped everything out that wasn't, work from home. So I kind of had a bit of a sink or swim mentality with it, and I'm like, we're going to make this a full-time career. I bought my first official microphone on my own. It is a Rhodes NT1A, that whole set, classic.
Some of
And
the best mics.
I still use it. It still holds up wonderfully. But I just kept going with that, and I then turned a part-time job into a full-time job. And then when theater came back, the show that I had booked before when everything closed also came back. So I was like, how to balance? But we did. So it was, and by that point I had an actual booth now. So yeah, that's just what I've been doing and what I will continue to do, because I work with some really kind people that like how I sound. So
I can tell you that we have tons of questions.
woo!
I hope you guys are ready to talk.
Yes.
Rapid fire.
Oh, I actually
Talk
don't
about
like
it.
talking.
Yeah, not accustomed to that at
Not
all.
my
No.
thing.
Yeah,
What's
you
the
guys
pay-
aren't getting
what's the-
paid to
yeah.
right now. That's why.
Yeah, it's like, you got my per finished hour rate? Or I say nothing.
Yeah, are we doing full hour minimum on this? Because
This
This
is
is
a
technically
royalty
duet, 'cause
share.
that
Thank
costs
you very
more.
much.
If you go 1 minute over, it's a full other hour.
Yeah,
that you get
exactly.
paid, just so
Are we
you know.
doing the editing on our end too? Is that because that's an additional
yeah.
fee right there for every?
Oh,
I don't do no.
I don't do it
that'll-
anymore,
That has
so-
to be outsourced.
I
I'm
Sorry.
gonna
barely
have
do
to
my own
call somebody.
narration, to be honest.
I have someone
Voices,
read my
maybe.
book to me so that I can.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
how
don't
to
want to
read.
read.
I don't want to read words.
Somebody reads it to me just so I know what I'm saying.
They say it into my ear and I speak it into the microphone. That's how
Exactly.
that works.
So how question from Facebook is how do you get into the mind of your characters? Do you like read the book beforehand? Do you have spreadsheets on these characters? How do you get into the mind of all of these characters and keep up with them as well?
I'll go first.
Yeah,
Sure.
sorry, go
Since
ahead.
we're
Steve.
sitting in silence. Yeah, definitely read the book first and get an overall feeling and sense of the story of the characters, how big they are, how long they're in there for. Sometimes you have those characters that as you're reading, the way the author wrote them is so exactly the way that like you hear them in your head. You just know exactly their personality, their disposition, what they're going to sound like, and there's no other way you could voice them. And so you're just like, this is easy, awesome. And then there's other times where they have these characters that you put in, you're like, I do not know how this is going to sound. And so that's when you put in some work time and you play around with some voices. And sometimes I'll even decide on a voice beforehand, and then I'll start recording it and go, yeah, that's shit. Okay, so let's go back for the next chapter and redo that voice, because now we've started to figure out how this voice should sound, and then I'll go back and change it or make adjustments or whatever. But yeah, that's as far as keeping track of them. I keep a separate audio file that lists all of their I color code all of my dialogue, and so on my audio file I have all of the different tracks color coded according to each character, so that that color is really referenced in my mind. And then I grab a little clip of whatever they said, put it in there, so that when I'm like, oh shit, book 3 is now here and I haven't done that one in about a year and a half. What were these characters sounding like? I can go back to that.
Dan?
Yeah. I actually have started asking authors and companies and stuff for a character Bible. So basically just an entire listing of all the major, minor players that an author wants to note, the name pronunciations, how they prefer it to sound, any additional info, things that can help color the language. I look in the script, in the text and everything for any adjective that is anywhere in relation to the character, because I just like to use that to help color the sound, color the characterization. But then sometimes, like, you know, like Steve was saying, it's just like it just clicks for some characters. Like you walk in, it's like, I can't imagine ever voicing this with any other voice, and it's just like putting on a really comfy pair of shoes that just works. It just slides right in, and you're like, okay, we're here, we're doing this. But yeah, I like to rely on the character Bible there and write down any sort of voice notes, placement things, and have an audio file separately with the voice samples.
Yeah, the audio files for voice samples is like a game changer, because I think, like Steve was saying, if in 2 years another book comes along in the same series and you're like, oh no, I don't know what they sound like, and you have to go trawling through your old audiobook, it is a nightmare. But series Bibles are like game changing.
Yeah, when you can
get, like-
outsource that stuff to the author and be like, give me some direction
Yeah.
here, it's really helpful. For
And
sure.
even sometimes, not that I would ever do this because it's bad, if you know the characters very well before you start the book, you may not need to pre-read the book if you know everything that's going on with all the characters in it, because then you know how they're going to react to every situation. And while it's not advised, if you're in a pinch, get to know the characters before you get to know the text, I think it saved me anyway a few times.
Yeah, I do agree. If you're on book 7 of a series, it's not there's no new characters. You know where the arc is going or something like that. I'm a huge proponent of absolutely read the book beforehand. That's where I am. I read the
Yeah.
books beforehand, so I know
Definitely.
everything about what I need to know about. But I have been in a position where I'm like warm reading. I'm not cold reading, but I'm warm reading, where I'm like
Yeah.
hitting a few chapters before the stream that day. Like, I haven't had time to sit down and read this whole thing, so I'll read 4 or 5 chapters before I go in today, make sure I'm cleared and I know what's going on, and then I'll hit it. I've had that happen a couple times with time crunches, but it is infinitely easier when you know what's
yeah.
going on.
So-
It is
so
infinitely
much
easier
easier.
when you have read
Yeah.
the entire book from cover to cover and you know what's happening.
Way less stressful that you're going to come upon one sentence that's like, he sounded exactly like this, which I didn't tell you 100 pages ago.
Mhm.
Good luck.
Yeah. I've had, and sometimes you want to try and make sure that you know as much as possible, but there's other times where authors, they fucking screw us. Like, I'm sorry, but
Bastards.
like, I'm gonna lay it
There's no
out here.
authors- there's
I had
no
a
authors
series that I
watching
was
us.
doing, and
That's good.
I had a character in there that was introduced in book 1, and it wasn't until book 3 of a 3-book series, a trilogy,
Oh, no.
that they say he says in his whatever, I can't even remember, it was like nasally or greasy voice or baritone voice, whatever
Deeply
it was,
specific
and it was
Scottish
very
voice.
different than what I had been doing for this character, and he had never mentioned it once, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know that?
You don't say the line.
That's I literally didn't in that instance. I cut that because it just said, he said in his baritone voice or whatever. I was like, don't need
Nope.
that.
Nope.
Don't
Yep.
need that. We're
And
not
because he
confusing
has.
people in book 3. Screw that.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, if you're not giving those descriptions in the beginning of introduction of the character, then you're not doing your job.
Or even
Unless,
giving it to you, like
Yeah.
just on
Yeah.
the audio end of it. It's like that's
FYI,
something you need to know,
FYI.
you know, to
That's
give it a
okay.
voice.
Really
I will
Going to
say,
this question, yeah.
I will say, yeah. What advice do you give authors that are seeking to work with a narrator for the first time? Give us the information. However, Ryan, I think who's hanging out with us in the audience, Ryan DeBruin,
Mhm.
I was super pissed with him with a
We can
series
talk about
because
them.
for many reasons, but this one specifically was because we were doing a series and there was a little gnome that showed up in a series in the first book. And I already had all of these characters that were really high like this. And oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing. And so we already had all of these characters that were variations of my upper range. And then I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this tiny gnome? And I was like, we know as narrators, don't give a voice that is hard for your vocal cords to a
Yeah.
big character. Make sure.
Oh, no.
So I saw that there was this big explosion and this character appeared to have died, but it was like you assumed it because this big explosion. And I thought, I'm going to make absolute sure. So I messaged Ryan and I was like, dude, is this gnome actually dead? Yes, he is dead. He is gone. I'm like, sweet. He only has a couple of lines. I can really, really do some fun stuff with his voice that's going to be damaging for me. Yeah, you know where this is going. Book 2, he resurrects the bastard.
I really like what you did with the voice.
I just
And
love
I'm-
what you did with the voice so
and
much. I had to bring them back.
I messaged him. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, oh yeah, right. I forgot about that. Sorry. Have fun. And I'm like, you were on my
Lol.
naughty list. You are on my naughty list.
Oh man.
Oh no.
Okay. So going back,
Amazing.
anyone else have any other advice for authors? I mean, we don't all have to go if you don't want to.
I think
Anything
giving
that-
us as much information as you have about your characters, even if it's not in this book. Like if you know in book 6 they're gonna turn into something, just tell us. Tell us what's gonna happen, and maybe we can do something that, like, when the listener go, oh yeah, he did that in book 1. Ooh.
I know you want to surprise us so that we're like, oh, we don't want to spoil it for you, authors. No,
We
you
need
need to
it.
spoil it for us. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah,
You-
we're
It's our job.
professionals. We can
Spoil it.
act like we're surprised. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Ah.
don't actually surprise us.
The other thing that I have to say for all authors out there, if you're aspiring authors or if you feel like you don't need to, editors, use an editor, please, for the love
Please
of
do
all
it.
that is good and holy in this
Was in
world.
here.
Use an editor. The other thing that will help you, in addition, not in replacement to an editor, is read the book out loud. Because there is stuff that makes sense when you read it on the page and your brain skips over things, or it's like rearranges the sentence. You're like, yeah, that works. It does not work the same when you read it out loud and you're like, oh shit, that sounds really dumb. No human alive would ever say that thing. How do I make that work? So those are my, please, for the love of all that is good.
I have an
that.
example of that, if I can jump on that real quick, because there's something that, like, you wouldn't think of it, but there's a book that I did where instead of they said, like the character Cecilia said, it was always said Cecilia. And that one little flip, it just, I don't know why, but it trips me up to say every time. So I'd get in there.
Cecilia
What was
said-
what was a half-hour like chapter turned out to be like an hour chapter just because of constantly going back and flipping it, because it's something that I get on the written page. It is unique, it's different, but that's not what we normally say as people. We like, that's not the go-to, and it's something innocuous, but it's like, maybe let your author or let your narrators know that you're trying to change things up a little bit, even if it's small and stupid. It's not to us because we have to say it.
Another
So-
one like that in that same vein is ands, missing ands. I have someone who will do lists, and they're a phenomenal writer, but they'll do lists and they never put an and in the list. So or like, even if it's just lists, it's actions, like such and such, such and such, such and such, and such is what it should be, but it won't be there. So my dumb ass will read that line, get all the way to the end, and have prepped the tone for the and to be there for the. There's no and here.
No.
Oh no.
There's
Wait,
no
it just
and
ends?
here.
It's just the sentence just ends. There's no conclusion to this sentence. Oh shit, missing an and. So I go back to the beginning and read the line through, and I will almost always add that and, because it needs to be there for an auditory listener. It doesn't make sense without it. Or like little missing things like articles, a, the, of, that kind of stuff. Those missing will be a really big deal in audio. Won't matter at all in the word. Like, you just put it in
Yeah.
there when you're reading it. It doesn't do anything. In the audio, you will immediately notice if you are not saying the word the. Immediately. It is apparent immediately. But I think one of the big things that I haven't heard anyone say yet as advice, if you, especially in our genres, if you are writing fantasy stories, if you are writing fantasy stories and fantasy novels or sci-fi, anything that has weird names, words, locations, things, anything that you are pronouncing in a weird way or unique way, or anything that is going to matter to you, if it is going to matter how something is said, let us have a pronunciation list. Give that to us, because sometimes we will, if we're hot in the middle of recording something and a word pops up, it may not be as easy as just dropping a line and saying,
That's a
like, hey,
day
how do you
ruiner.
say this 7-letter word that's all consonants, and you may not get an answer. And now either I have to make the choice of like, okay, I'm going to drop a marker here and I'll go back and fix it later, or it's clear enough. I'm just going to pick a pronunciation and I'm going to bank that this doesn't matter because I'm in a hurry and I don't have a chance to ask about this one specific word. And so don't make your narrator choose that. If you need something pronounced, Steve and I know are in unique situations because we're on stream a lot of the time. So a lot of time our authors are there talking with us and stuff, and we can just say, hey, how do you pronounce their name? But that's not the case a lot of times. So if it matters to you, if it's a thing you want and need, absolutely give us a pronunciation list. We will follow it. We will do our absolute best to follow it. I don't know a narrator that has spit on a pronunciation list. We appreciate them 99.999% of the time. Please give them to us.
Like
it's
water
just
in a desert.
Yes, please. So if you have it.
I was going to backtrack just for a quick second. What kind? Just a quick question: is it a dev editor or a copy editor?
Both.
Okay. That's what I just wanted to ask because I know that there's a difference. So Andrea touched on the next one, which she said her and Steve do. Gary and Dan, do you guys live stream like they do?
Not like they do on my end anyway. I've been
Not
bad
like
about
they
it.
do, man.
No,
They
but
just,
they're very
oh my word.
consistent, very good at keeping a
Gluttons
good
for
schedule. I haven't done that as well. Sometimes, but not as much.
Yeah.
I'm not so much. I guess I'm kind of weird because I don't know how to work Discord. I'm a grandpa with Discord. I do not know why.
It's hard.
It just doesn't. Yeah, like there's some things that click with me. Instagram clicks with me just because it's pretty pictures, so I just can that's easy. But Discord, just for whatever reason, it's just so much.
I go into their servers and I'm just like, this is a shopping mall of stuff I can do. So much here. And then you try set one up. It's like, I don't know where to start, what to do, what to write.
Nope.
No, bye.
No, and with doing the work and stuff, I guess it's like with work anymore, I get very self-conscious, and I'm very private with the work in there, and it's kind of really why I like doing it. It's like once it's off to the editor, once it's done there, it's like it's passed my quality check. I've made sure that it's good, it's what I want, and then I never listen to it again. And I'm like, I hope people like it. But with Discord stuff, it's like, it's in real time. And I feel like it's more pressure. So kudos to you guys for being able to actually stream that. Cause I would feel like really, ugh.
I was like that when I
Definitely
first started,
vulnerable.
for sure. Yeah.
It's vulnerable for sure.
Yeah.
I hugely enjoy it, but yeah, it's starting out especially. It is a lot. Like it can be intimidating. It helps to not start with a gigantic audience. Like that helps. When I first started streaming, I had like 2 or 3 people, maybe,
How do you find...
and then it slowly was like 3, 4. And then, now it'll be anywhere from, I think there's like 6 or 7 of us that are in there like almost all the time. And then it'll balloon up to, 75 at certain points during certain books like TWI and stuff. Like The Wandering Inn will have like 75 people in there, but then it'll go back down. And usually it's somewhere in between, usually obviously between those 2 extremes, it's on the extreme of like, 20, but
yeah,
it's somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Hey, so how what advice do you guys have for narrating of the opposite sex? So
play the character, not the voice.
Yeah, you don't need to go extreme in like, a girl doesn't sound like this and a boy doesn't always sound like this. Just play the character and it will usually come off as genuine and authentic.
Mechanical tips, mechanically making the voices, the tips that I can give. Speaking more fluidly through vowels is more of a feminine thing to do on average. These are averages, generalities, but they are things that we would generally associate with a certain gender. Hardening consonants is typically a more masculine thing to do. Making more tonal shifts through vowels or words is typically a more feminine thing to do. Those are things, but those also tie into accents as well, which makes it more difficult. Like I did a book called System Apocalypse Australia, which is all in Aussie accents, but I can't do male Australian accents. I sound like a drunk Cockney who got hit in the head. It doesn't sound
so Australian.
Right. Yeah.
There's a difference.
Make it work. So I had to bring on a male narrator to do the male Australian accents because something about shifting and hardening the consonants and trying to do the more masculine tone, it mutates the accent at the same time. So coming up with doing accents in the other gender, I think is its own like difficulty. But The biggest piece of advice, what everybody said, play the character, not the gender. That's what matters most. But if you are looking mechanically for ways to make things sound more masculine or feminine, speaking in more definite tones with downward inflections and hardened consonants is going to generally make you sound more masculine. Speaking with slightly more upward inflections or more melody to your voice will generally make it sound more feminine. Millions of exceptions to those rules, but those are like general guidelines of play with that and see where you end up, basically.
I actually had an aspiring voice actor narrator who popped into my Discord. It happens on occasion where they'll come in and they'll ask questions like that. And somebody just did this week asking specifically about that type of thing. And or no, wait, that was on TikTok Live. Anyways, it doesn't matter. One of the things that I suggested to them was that what I have found works is women tend to be more intentional with their speaking and more engaged, whereas guys are more aloof. Again, as Andrea said, generally speaking. So body position and posture can help with that in getting that attitude across. So man spread when you're doing a guy, and then tighten everything up and get a little bit more, not to say that women are uptight, that's not what I'm saying, but it'll help, you get into that position, that mentality, and that's all under the guise of character is everything. So yeah.
I know that Scott Brick also, I saw a talk he was giving on YouTube that he talked about the breath control as well, and how because he's mentions like, and I think RC Bray mentioned this too in an interview or in a chat, but they already know that I'm not a woman because I am me. So we're hoping that the through line of character, but if it helps to just put a little bit more air in the lines from female characters to just help differentiate that, to give it more of a lightness without changing the pitch. Because like Gary said, women don't talk up here. And that's not a one-to-one thing. So, but character is everything.
All right. So, I'm gonna go on to this. This was a good question. It was from someone on Facebook, and it's, if you get into their mind and the character goes to a dark space, how do you protect your own mental health? I think this could also be for even on sad, like really down, like sad parts too. Like, when a character dies that you've all been really close to. So I don't know who wants to start that and what you've had in your series.
I think
I'm a marshmallow.
I'll say, like, whiskey helps.
Yeah. My Little Pony, not intaking sad stuff on my own. I don't watch Game of Thrones. I don't watch, I don't intake sad or impactful, dramatic things on my own typically to mitigate, because I don't control what's going to be in the books that I'm going to narrate. I don't control when characters die or my reaction to those things. So when I get done with a day where some big character that I'm just in love with has died and I'm soul crushingly sad, I go upstairs and paint or draw or watch My Little Pony or do something that relieves me or enriches my life in some way that makes me value the days that I have and value the life that I have, so I can kind of appreciate life and understand that death is what makes it so precious, or whatever the case may be in the story. But it's hard. I think that's reality for most people. It's fucking hard when it happens.
Yeah.
I will
And
say
sometimes,
sorry,
go ahead, Gary.
Just very quick. Like, if you allow yourself to get into the headspace, but know that it's the character. Allow yourself to feel how the character feels, go through what they need to go through, but then get out of the booth, get out of that situation and be like, I am me. You can still feel sad about it, but know that, like, okay, we are different. And then have some, like Andrea was saying, like, have something for yourself that makes you feel good, enriches your life. And it should be a good balm or barrier to make sure, it doesn't affect you too much.
There's a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? An easier thing for when you're doing audiobook narration, as opposed to almost any other form of acting when it comes to difficult or dark characters or really hard scenes, because you're doing all of the characters. Now that's great when you get to play the hero and you get to do this, and fun when you get to go into being that villain, but it also allows you, whereas, we know that there's some actors who go full method with their character that they're doing, and they stay in that character for months while filming or while being on stage, and that can be very daunting and difficult. But when you're doing an audiobook, you don't get to stay in that character for very long before you have to snap out of it and get into another character. So it's harder sometimes because you're having to code switch so much, but then at the same time, you're not forced to wallow in that character for very long before you got to go deal with another character or respond to whatever happened to that scenario. And I will say that sometimes tragedy in your life can be it can be a therapy when you're recording a book and you have a similar situation that happens in your book, and you get to work it out or speak it out through a character that you're doing. My mom recently passed at the end of last year, and then we had the memorial this past year, and I was recording a book where one of the characters, his mom dies, and he holds her in his arms, and that one for me was, I mean, it was just so it was hard, but it was so good to be able to do that and to feel like I was honoring my mom in that way and in that book, and kind of immortalizing what the love that I have for my mom by putting it into that book and knowing that that book is out there. So in that way, you're able to bring, as I think most actors do, is they draw from their own life experiences to put into those characters. But so the same way that it can be difficult and challenging to do scenes that are impossibly hard, and I've had ones where I'm literally bawling my eyes out, and then I think Lars McMuller, that bastard, I had a scene that I had to do, and I literally, like, I had a stress headache after it was done, and I had probably another hour, 2 hours of recording left to do that day, and I was like, I can't. I had to stop. And you have to know that. You have to know when it's time for you to stop, take a beat, and then go and hug a loved one, watch a funny show, go escape for a little bit, and get out of that mentality so that you can get on with the rest of your life.
I think the other darkness that can be hard too is when we have to play something that's just so vile, so horrible. When you have to play that character that is just laughing in the face of someone's agony, and you have to sell it. And I mean, most actors joke about the fact that the villains are always super fun to play. Like, villains are always great, but there are these moments where you're not playing a villain, you're playing something vile, that's just doing something absolutely awful to someone that you love in the book. And I think those can be some of the toughest moments, because you have to become that, you have to embody that, you have to be that for that period of time. And those are the days that I'll get out of the booth and I'll go upstairs and hug Hayes, my husband. I'll cuddle my kitten Maeve, or I'll just watch something that relieves the pressure a little bit. But in the moment, as far as like, how do you do that? How do you become that? How do you get into the mindset? You let go. You don't be you. You're the character for a while. Don't be afraid of who's going to listen to you, who's going to hear you, who's going to judge you, who's going to make faces at you, who's going to laugh at you. None of it matters, because you are that character. They're not laughing at you. They're laughing at the character, only if they're supposed to. If you are authentically selling a character, you're going to pull off what you're trying to pull off. And just knowing how to drop into that character and then come back out of it again, I think is a hard-won skill we've all worked pretty hard to be able to achieve. That's a constant growing thing. We're all learning, I think, every day when we're doing that. It's tough, but
it's tough on its own to get into the character, like, and then you get there and you're like, oh shit, I gotta get out. No. Too much,
too far.
Dan, did you have anything to input?
They all said it perfectly.
Okay.
I'm just like, I was like, all I can say is, like, it's just it would just be repeating. Just honestly, like,
No.
I guess I'd reiterate though, like, to allow yourself to feel that, as a person. Like, I mean, we are conduits for the characters. We are telling this story, and we are also experiencing and feeling it ourselves. And so it is okay to have that feeling. It is okay to go there, knowing that you can come back from it and come out of it. And if you need to step away from the booth for the rest of the day, that's okay, because that's what you're feeling, and that's authentic, and that's valid. I've had two books that I can think of specifically where I ended the chapter in tears and just said, that's enough work for the day, I think. And I texted the authors afterwards, just like, damn you, but thank you, because this is like it moved me, and I just let myself feel that, and then I was fine the next day because gave myself the proper time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, the performance you turn in from letting yourself feel those things is phenomenal compared to what it would be if you didn't.
Mhm.
But after that experience, you're so kind of like, okay, I need to be happy in the next chapter. That's not happening today. But if you would give yourself the time, like everyone's saying, do it tomorrow, again, you keep that quality up and you're very much in the zone of what you're narrating.
Mhm.
So now that we went down, we're going to go up. And don't quote me on stuff.
So happy.
So who has been like your favorite character to narrate? You don't have to choose a favorite either, because you don't want to out somebody else. So if you don't want to, you don't have to say your favorite. You could also say something else. Who knows? You can even give us a voice of them too.
I had a favorite character that I don't think people will have heard. It's in what's it called? It recently came out by Tivaga for Prophecy Approved Companion. And I played a character that I think was like a fish creature. So there were 2 tracks, and one of the tracks was literally and then he was just like, hello, how are you? I am talking to you like this. And he was in it for like 3 lines, but I was like, this is my finest work. This is what I'm here for.
Oh man!
Or I had to do like a German otter, which was like, hello everybody, I'm very cute and I'm an otter.
Oh man,
a ton of fun.
that's
That
great.
is awesome.
That's so much fun. Just those, I feel like those silly characters, those like one-off silly characters
Gets
who
a
you
little
hope
loose.
come back, that you can just let loose completely
Mhm.
and cut and just let it all go. I love those ones, but like some of the favorites, to not offend, because I do have a lot of favorites though. But I love
Oh, same. Man.
Clovis from Tokens and Towers, because it's just fun to play a character who's so deadpan in such a wild and wacky book that also features a hamster Macho Man Randy Savage, who is also on the list. So just having that sort of dry humor in a genre, especially also with so many fantastical creatures and characters, it just tickles me. It just hits me in the right place.
Mhm.
And then another one is a Mecha Mage Glitter Spindle from the Battleborn series. I just love how wild and wacky and kind of Joker-esque the voice is, and it's just fun. Again, any character that can make me laugh in the booth and have to stop just because I'm laughing too hard, that kind of character.
Those are the best. Those are so
Okay.
much fun.
Beauty.
Do you have a favorite?
Ooh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, sorry. No, I have lots of them. I don't have. I have characters that make me happy for different reasons. Like I have characters that are fun to voice for different reasons.
Mhm.
Some of them are more like me. Some of them just have things that I like doing. As far as like characters that I'm proud of, that I would like pin, like. Yeah, like Gary said, this is my finest work. That's the Antinium from TWI, because they're
Oh
a
my
completely
word.
manufactured accent. They're completely like their whole thing is like from the ground up made up for that accent and stuff from those characters. So they're so much fun because I've gotten to see them kind of grow and change and shift and become who they are and these people rather than just, hive mind bugs, and that's been super fun. So the Antinium I'm super proud of. But then there's characters like this sexy pig in Flux voice. It's
Oh.
like this hedonistic pig woman who's like lounging on a chase and she snorts while she's talking. And for the life of me, I could not do it without listening to that character voice, because she's in there for like 3 lines or like it's one scene. So it's like maybe 10 lines total. And she just like everything is snorting and laughing and pig noises, and that wasn't in the book. Like it didn't say she did that, but I was in the middle of doing it, and I was trying everything for this character because she's so over the top and like just I don't know. She's a hedonistic pig lady. Like, can you? That's pretty self-encompassing what she is. And she's got her husband is like crawling on the floor and like she's resting her feet on him and stuff. It's very good. And I started voicing her, and I'm like, I cannot do this without having snorting pig noises. That is impossible for this character. If I don't, I will be so deeply disappointed in myself. So I sat there snorting like a pig, trying to do that character correctly, and so proud of it. So proud of it. My mom is one of my editors, and I got a message at like 9 o'clock at night, and she's like, "I just got to the pig. OMFG." And I'm like, "Thank you. My work here is done."
Steve.
Oh yeah, I'm in the same boat. I have favorites. I have characters that I remember very much. And I love getting to do those small one-offs where you get to play around a little bit. I had a series that I was doing where the guy was basically Death's advocate on Earth. And so just he would go meet 3 or 4 people. They were either mercenaries or guards or bandits or whatever they were. And they would talk for like a few lines and then he would kill them. And in book 2, we're hitting like guard group number 20 something. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with these voices? And one of the guards said E-A or E-H at the end of their comment. And I was like, he's going to be Canadian. We haven't had a Canadian in here. This is a fantastic opportunity. And so I was joking around. And this is one of the things I love about being on Discord, because you get that feedback or that commentary. And and I said, I feel like we should do a Canadian on this. And they're like, yes. And I was like, but we can't just make him Canadian. And so I don't even know how it happened, if someone suggested it or whatever, but he ended up being a Canadian SpongeBob. So,
Discord's what
okay.
happened.
So today is what we're gonna do. And so yeah, that was just his voice. And I was like, this is freaking awesome. And then I had another alien creature that the way he talked, he was so disdainful towards humans, and thought that he was the shit and that humans were not worth anything. And I was like, this is Marvin the Martian. So you have this accelerator, I'm going to tell you. So yes, you are not worth anything and I am amazing. So yeah, getting to play with that kind of stuff is freaking awesome. I love it.
So I think we have time for one more question. And then we will be wrapping up. So if we did not get to any of your questions, please, there's a Discord. You can post them there. The narrators are there. They can answer those questions. We have a channel for it. Please, these are all great questions. So how do you guys feel about dual or multi? Okay, so we have dual and we have duet. I know that at least those two are multi-narrated books at least. And then is it easier or harder? And then how do you feel about those? Gary?
I think it depends on where you're doing, like with what publisher or who you're doing the duet with. So in terms of acting, it can be fun to do it live, but it's also very, very time consuming. So in that respect, it would be harder, I think. I mean, it's longer and it's harder, but it can be a lot of fun because you actually have a second person who will do, or a third, but then, don't know how many you have, but you have someone else to bounce off. You're like, oh, I wouldn't have done that way. And now my reaction is different to what it would have been had I been doing this book on my own. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, you can get more creative with it because someone else is informing what you're going to do, depending on what they say and how they deliver the line. So harder in some ways and a lot easier in other ways. There's a non-answer for you.
It's accurate though. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's mechanically more difficult because you have to worry about matching somebody else's tone and delivery and responding to somebody else, and it's mechanically difficult to like get everybody together at one time. So most of the time we're recording separately, and it's sometimes you're not even recording at the same time periods. Like sometimes you're recording a month before the actual book is recorded or whatever it is. Like you fit it in when you have time. So there are really difficult like logistical issues with it, but the reward is really good. When you get narrators that you mesh really well with, or other voice actors that you mesh really well with, it works so well. And especially if you have kind of a team in place, like if you have a partner you work with all the time, or your team is set up to accommodate it all the time, or it's something you do very frequently, it's a little easier. I think it's a little tougher if you don't do it all the time. So it's like a difference from your normal pattern. That makes it more challenging for sure. But it's fun. It's rewarding. I like the result of it, but I tend to avoid it for the most part because of the mechanical difficulties. It just takes longer and stuff. It's more difficult unless somebody else is narrating. If someone else is narrating, sure, I'll do voices for you.
Yeah. That is a big like. Oh, you're handling the most. Yeah, fine.
Yeah,
on board.
absolutely.
Yeah. There is a big difference, I think, in the amount of work and the way you treat how you're doing a dual narration versus a duet narration. Dual narration being that you're narrating all the characters, male and female, in your scene, and then in the next scene, when it's from the female perspective, in my case, they narrate all of those same characters. So that can be a lot more time consuming when you're dealing with needing to know how that other narrator is treating different characters. You're never going to have the character sound exactly the same. You're a man and a woman, and it's going to be completely different. Even if you're a man and a man, you're not going to have them sound exactly the same necessarily, but you need to have some semblance of similarity. Like one person can't just be going, oh, this is the way they're going to sound and it's going to be really lovely. And then the other person's like, yeah, they're going to sound like this. It just, it doesn't work. So you have to get how they relate to other characters, making sure that their tone and their pitch are going to be the same, and then also making sure that you're keeping the accent or the personality or the disposition or the cadence at least somewhat similar, so that it's not so disjointed between the two. So that can take a lot of work, especially if your other partner is not really interested in communicating or is kind of flaky. That can be a challenge. Different than when you're doing duet narration, which is what a lot of the other narrators were talking about there, where you're just doing a voice, and that's great because you're only doing that voice. You don't have to worry about how anyone else would do that voice because nobody else is doing that voice. But it can be challenging in the fact that when you're doing dialogue back and forth, if someone is looking at a scene a certain way and they're like, oh, these people are really angry and irritated and I need to play it that way, and the other person's like, they seem angry and irritated, but it's more tongue-in-cheek and there's a lot of fun banter in there, if you don't record that together, it's going to feel very disjointed when you try and combine those two voices. So one of the things that I've tried to do and that I love doing is recording even a little bit of the book simultaneously. Andrea and I have done this when we've worked together, where we'll go on to Discord Live, the two of us. She'll be recording on her end, I'll be recording on my end, but we still narrate the thing together. And oh my word, the best times are when I get to do that. It's so much fun because, yeah, you actually feel like you're getting to play off of someone and act and perform and then read what they're saying. And like Gary said, transfer that back over because maybe they did something that you weren't aware of. And you're like, now you can play into that. Whereas if it was recorded at a different time, that bit that they did maybe falls flat because you didn't catch it. And the laughter that ensues when your partner inevitably fucks up a line and then the other narrator hears it and just can't stop laughing is the best, which is what happened to Andrea as she heard me stumble through all of my stuff. So lots more work, definitely a lot more work. And that doesn't even include all of the editing work that has to happen outside of that. It's so much.
It's the worst.
So,
but it is
studios, different microphones.
Yeah, it is. It can be very rewarding, but in order for it to be done well, it takes a lot of time, a lot of extra effort and prep, and then a lot of extra post-production. Yeah. So it is a significantly larger amount of effort. The only exception to that may be if you do have both the narrators are able to record either simultaneously or in the same booth. That kind of stuff helps, but it still doesn't make it so that it's just like, oh, well, you should only have to pay this person this much and this person this much because it's simple. You're only having to do half the work. No, you oftentimes have to do more work than had you done it entirely on your own. Yeah, so yeah. And that's for two people, not just one.
So we have less than 2 minutes left.
No.
Dan, I apologize. We probably won't get to you for that piece of the question
It's fine.
because I want you guys to all be able to have one last piece of saying who you are, some series that you do, and then if you want to say goodbye or anything else, and if you want to do it in a character voice, you can. I know people love to hear you guys do the characters. This has been the Voice of an Angel panel with the narrators, and thank you all for attending with us. We have another panel coming up at 2 p.m. and there is a takeover. There is a few author narrator takeovers on the Facebook page as well. Check out the Discord. Check out the charity that is the Heart to Heart International, I believe it is. Proceeds are going to help with relief in Ukraine. I don't want to be the last person to talk, so you guys can figure out who that might be, and you guys can say your final pieces. We've got a minute and a half, or 2 minutes or so. So you guys. Gary, you want to start?
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Gary Furlong. I'm working on some series by Jay Hogan called Southern Lights, and I'm working on a series by Anna Butler for Decent Fellows Press called Lancaster's Luck. They're very good. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Don't sign off right away. Just stay on still.
Stay here.
Stay here. Hi there. This has been Daniel Wisniewski. Battleborn 3 comes out in a couple of weeks, I hope. And also Class Shift will be coming out. Class Shift 2 will be coming out soon. Just a bunch of great stuff. Thank you so much for your continued listening, and have a lovely, fantastic day.
I'm Andrea Parsnow. I'm currently working on Tower of Somnus, Book 3 by Dean Hanegard, Cale Plamet. Sorry. My bad. I work on 2 books back to back. My bad. Sorry. Forgive me later. Anyway, I'm such a jerk. Anyway, we're going to Tower of Somnus. Next book coming up is Binding Words 8 by Daniel Shinhofen. You can find me on Discord every day, discord.gg/Andrea Parsnow. I would love to see you. I'm here Monday through Saturday, usually yelling something random into a microphone.
And I'm Steve Campbell, and I already talked about what I'm working on currently and one of the books that is coming out soon, but another series that is really near and dear to my heart, is a massive passion project for me, is the Bright Lord series by Alex Knowles. That compendium, the entire 7-book series, is coming out very, very soon, any day now in the next week or two. And I hope you check it out because it was amazing. That one of those scenes was one of those ones with very emotional, lots of great stuff in that one. So please check that one out. And I have to, because the people that hang out with me on Discord will be mad if I don't, switch over to my Irish accent and say this is fucking unbelievable, because they get really irritated if I don't swear in my Irish accent. So
I love
fuck
Irish
you all.
Steve.
Nice.
Thank you all for joining us today for this panel. Thank you to the narrators. Thank you to everyone on Facebook. I know we could probably go for a couple of hours. There is a channel in the Discord that you can all come and answer questions, because there was still so many questions that we did not get to. Thank you guys. And again, there are takeovers on the Facebook page. There are more panels happening today. I know that there's a 2:00, and then I think Andrea's on another one later on today too.
I should have said that.
We
I'm on a
both
panel
are,
tonight at
I
8
think.
o'clock with Daniel.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Daniel Shinhofen tonight.
Nice. I thought me. I was like, wait, what panel?
What am I
No, I'm
I
on
mean,
one
if you want.
tomorrow. Aha!
Yeah.
Jump in.
Sorry.
I'm on
Yeah.
there
Just
with
like
you,
Daniel.
Andrea, on that panel. You and I are on there together. I'm with
Oh, yeah,
Ryan
Steve's there
DeBruin.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh, keep-
Steve's on another panel, or he's moderating another panel in a couple of days, and he's on the
The
Canadian
juice.
panel too.
Aha!
Yes.
Yeah, should we say that too? Like, because
Jeez.
oh, man, I'm on one tomorrow too. I'm on 2
There you
tomorrow. I
go.
think. There we go. Cool.
It's all on the website, guys.
Ah.
Thank you. I don't know when